Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 3953. Today's date is March 20, 2026. It's been almost like 10:02 p.m. Okay, today I'm kind of like starting something new question. Okay, first of all, let me tell you something. Sometimes now I just kind of like a feel like that ki, like I don't know, if I see the problem and if I see that ki I could solve that problem, then can I able to can I solve that problem or not? Like, let's just ask this question to I'm actually asking this question to myself. Let's just say I see the problem is not mine, the problem is kind of like a someone else. If I solve that problem, or like basically this thing, I do know that I could able to solve the problem. The question is that ki, can I solve that problem or not? Like will I put my effort to solve someone problem or not? I ask this question and to myself, and sometimes I realize that ki, yeah, why not? Why should you know? Why, if you can solve someone problem, then it would be really good, na? Yeah, you should solve someone problem, right? But it's just like that, na? Ki in return, I realize that ki if I started solving that problem, then probably I have to be lose myself, or I have to be kind of like somebody just forget myself. Okay, why am I kind of like a talking blank and things like that? I don't know. You might kind of like somebody tell me, say me, or I don't know. You might consider me as kind of like crazy or things like that. But okay, I am not a graduate person. In 10th standard, I get 56 marks. 10th standard SSC board, I get 56 mark. In 12th standard, I get 49 percentage, 49 marks, 49 percentage probably. In the 10th standard, 56 percentage. In 12th standard, 49 percentage. I barely pass on those exams. Okay. Then after that, I started doing engineering diploma. Engineering diploma, by the way, not degree, diploma. It took me almost like a 6 year to complete 2 year of diploma. By the way, after I 12th, I went to engineering diploma, and in the engineering diploma, I admission direct second year. So for me, it was only 2 year to complete engineering diploma, but it took me 6 year to complete engineering diploma. So basically, this thing that ki, why am I kind of like saying this thing is because of that ki, you just have to understand me that ki, I am not really good at education thing. I'm not really good at that. And since the beginning, I always have kind of like a thought process that ki, I wanted to be filmmaker and things and that and that and that. Okay. So I was kind of like a focus on being filmmaker and things and that and that and that. But then I realized that ki, I am not a kind of like a something person that not good at education. No, I like to know stuff. I like to know kind of like a somebody astrophysics, mechanics, engineering. I love to know how those things actually happen. I love know science, histories and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. And basically this thing, I realized that ki, like, then what is actually wrong? Like, what is actually wrong thing happened? Like, basically this thing that ki, am I kind of like somebody really excited or eager for getting those knowledge and things and that and that? Then why am I didn't really score that many kind of like a something marks in exam? Why not? Is that kind of like a happened something in between? Like basically in the kind of like a somebody, when I was child, I was kind of like a somebody just not focus on study, and right now I'm very much focused on study. So is this kind of like a transition happened? Then I kind of like realized that no, not really. Like, I always love consuming information. Okay, yeah. but very different way. Like basically this thing I still remember that key in maybe 7th or 8th standard, I'm not really sure, my father put me a cable TV. Okay, yeah. Now in the cable TV, there is a kind of like a something channel, Discovery Channel was there, and I kind of like a watch those Discovery Channel. I watch kind of like a web series named Cosmos. Okay, then Mega Structure. These are kind of like a couple of shows are kind of like a broadcast on Discovery or Net Geo channel, and I really love to watch. I really love to watch regarding about how the engineering cars, specifically the cars. Okay, yeah. Like at that time there is a Audi car. Okay, they kind of like a manufacture, and how they kind of like a make that specific car with a such more aerodynamics and that much powerful engine. How they build up that car in the manufacturing. I love to get that information. So basically, is this thing that transition does not really happen? Like basically, if you think that key after the schooling, after the college and education, I kind of like a transformation happened, and then after that I'm consuming information. No, that is not. I always love consuming information. I always want to know things and that and that. Then if I am that particular person, then why am I not kind of like a somebody really good at study? Okay, yeah. Then I realized that there is a problem actually happened. Okay, let me tell you one thing now. I am not consuming information through word. Okay, word means what? Like if I say elephant, I imagine elephant. Yeah, I am not imagine as a ELEPHENT, because I process information through images, not word. Okay, and this is what kind of like a biggest problem for me, because words are never been my kind of like a very good friend, and most of my syllabus, most of whatever the education are focused on words. They don't really visualize anything at all regarding about how the Newton law work, how the kind of like a somebody the numerical works. What exactly is this thing? They don't really kind of like a somebody visualize. Okay, another thing is that when I was schooling, no one told me that why am I learning this? Why am I learning trigonometry? Why am I learning kind of like a differential equation? Why am I learning this kind of like a some history things? Why am I learning about the Mughal architecture? Why am I learning? Like they don't tell me why am I learning. They just tell me. They just kind of like this is the syllabus. This is it. So what is actually problem? MI did not really score that much is because of that kind of like a somebody not really have like a not they don't really visualize and things and that. So is that kind of like somebody not have that kind of like education because of you didn't really score? I think yes, I think no. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, but I strongly realize that in my education, specifically in India, education are not a kind of like a something the like it became a business, not just business. It just became a kind of like a thing that like I don't know how I supposed to explain this thing. The people who get really higher score in education, they are also not doing anything at all. Like they are not really that smart as well. They are just like, okay, I don't know. Okay, there is a kind of like some sort of kind of like some transformation happened inside of me. I wanted to tell you. Okay, yeah. That when I see the history, I understand from the history. When I see the World War, when I see the World War means like that right now I'm kind of like watching a kind of like a documentary series of World War by Jaggyasiyam. Is a YouTuber who kind of like make an entire documentary series of World War II. I am watching that web series, watching that kind of like an entire video series of YouTube, and I kind of like understand that how the kind of like a World War II actually happened and things and that. Okay, now why am I kind of like wanting to know about this World War II? Because I am really excited, enthusiastic regarding about that. Okay, and I'm getting a lot of information from these videos, and I'm getting so much amount of value. Okay, yeah. But what kind of like a value am I utilizing it? Like there is a lot of thing. Basically is this thing na ki, let's just say that ki in the World War II, the German who kind of like assembly attack France by blitzkrieg technique. In the blitzkrieg technique, the attack is kind of like a going really rapidly, and they just kind of like assembly that key you defeat your enemy not by the weapon, by the speed of your the movement of yours. That is called blitzkrieg technique. Okay, yeah. Now basically this thing, why do I kind of like get this information? Because it kind of like somebody understand me regarding about the battle techniques, regarding about that how do I supposed to be execute any kind of like a modern warfare. Okay, if I wanted to implement or if I wanted to execute any piece of target, I make sure that that piece of target should supposed to be executed as fast as it can. If it takes time, then the logistic really required or any kind of like effort it required to do is very too much. Like let's just say this thing that let's just say that there is a kind of like assembly terrorist camp is actually in particular country. Okay, yeah. And that terrorist camp is kind of like producing a lot of kind of like a terrorists, which will kind of like create a lot of chaos in the world and things and that and that. So basically, what is actually my protocol? How do I supposed to do? First is that I have to be convinced that particular country that in your country there is a terrorist thing and that and that. But there the country's government is actually kind of like assembly that providing so much amount of resources so that they were supposed to do this thing and that and that and that, because they are kind of like getting internal politics and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. So basically this thing, how do I supposed to kind of like execute this thing? First of all, try to kind of like execute by the media or by the kind of like a things, or by I don't know, just kind of like some this thing by create a pressure by geopolitical pressure to stop this thing. But internal politics are always kind of like a covered and things and that and that. Okay, so another technique is that I just have to execute those terrorist camp by fast. How do I supposed to do that? By launching the Tomahawk missile. Like basically in US they have kind of like a Tomahawk missile. It's a sniper in the sky. Okay, yeah. You could kind of like a launch and it will kind of like a hit the target very precisely. Okay, yeah. Like a BrahMos missile is in India. Okay, yeah. There is a lot of kind of like some missiles are actually available. Okay, you could target President missile. We could target that camp, and it will kind of like all the kind of like some terrorist will gonna die and things like that. Plus there is a little bit of civilian will gonna die, but throughout this thing, which it will kind of like somebody stop for some certain period of time, because if you kind of like a camouflage and little bit, it might gonna work out and things like that. Whatever. Why am I kind of like saying this thing? Is because of that na ki like I am not kind of like thinking about kind of like a killing any kind of like a terrorist camp and things and that. But because of I watch those kind of like some World War II documentary series and things and that, I'm getting this battlefield technique regarding about that and that. And whenever in my entire period of lifetime, if I might gonna need it, I might gonna utilize that thing. What I realized that key knowledge are kind of like somebody expand my thought process so that I would supposed to be do much more better and things and that. Okay, and this is what kind of like somebody I realize this thing. So basically this thing why am I kind of like giving a justification? Okay, I am kind of like giving the justification regarding about that I am kind of like asking such a question to myself that probably is this thing that I shouldn't supposed to do this thing. Like basically is this thing in okay, let me tell you one thing. What kind of like a question that you are actually asking? Okay, I usually in my artifact I usually ask such a question to myself so that it should supposed to be add value in my life. Okay, yeah. But in today I will gonna ask such a question that it will not gonna add value in my life. It will gonna add value in the future, not to me, to the students. But how? Like, okay, I'm gonna kind of like a really upfront regarding about that, blunt regarding about that. Okay, I wanted to become a education minister of India in the future. I'm not really sure when will I become or not. I am still not really sure. I am completely unaware of that. It was completely blind spot regarding about everything. I don't know why am I kind of like saying this thing, but I think that na ki I wanted to become a education minister of India, and I wanted to kind of like assembly like a change this particular system, that our education system that we have. Okay, yeah. But before taking this huge step, I need to understand everything regarding about how the education work happened, things and that and that and that, so that I would understand. Am I qualified for that particular position? Definitely not. Am I able to be change that thing? Definitely not. The stuff that I will gonna say is exactly right? Definitely not. It was completely legitly just my opinion, and this was not exactly right. It was completely like a it was completely kind of like a simply just me talking, and completely just like a whatever the information that I'm completely pretty much sure that the stuff that I'm saying is not exactly right, is not exactly wrong either. It's a raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information saying, because it's just kind of like a long shot. I'm not really sure that this will gonna happen. I'm not really sure anything at all, but just my instinct kind of like a telling me that he ask this question to yourself. So that's why I'm kind of like simply asking this question. Okay. So get it? Alright. So let's just ask. This is the question number first. Okay. Okay, the question is, how clearly have I defined the core purpose of Indian education system? To transmit knowledge, expand opportunity, strengthen citizenship, build character, or prepare learner for changing economy, and how do I balance these aim without creating policy confusion? Oh, okay. Okay, it's a very kind of like a very like a very curated question. Okay, yeah. The question is a kind of like a very much difficult to understand. So let's just kind of like understand this question in simple form. Okay, yeah. I am using this Gemini to kind of like a try to kind of like a explain this question in simple language. Okay, the question. So I'm kind of like a giving the simplification. Think of your question as asking, what is the main point of school in India, and how do we make sure we aren't trying to do too many things at once? To make it even simpler, your question breaks down into two parts. Part 1, what is the job of school? You listed the 5 different jobs. Imagine a student is like a seed being planted. What should the school, a gardener, focus on? School means gardener. Okay. Transmit the knowledge. Just giving the student information regarding about math, science, history. Expand opportunity. Making sure that students get a kind of like a good job. Okay. Strengthen citizenship. Teaching the students how to become a good part of India or good citizen of the India. Build character, making student a good person, a kind of like a honest, kind, hardworking leader. Prepared for changing economy, teaching the student how do we use new technology and handle this job when it even exists. And the part two of this question is that how do we all 5 things getting together not get confused? Like basically it's this thing that key everything should supposed to happen but not get confused. The confuse happened when the school tries to do all those things at once and crash into each other. If the schools only cares about opportunity means exam, they might forget about the character building. If they only focus on transmit knowledge, then they will kind of like a forgot about the changing economy? Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, yeah. So, okay, regarding about this simplification, what I understand this thing, I understand that ki, first of all, let's just ask simple question to myself. Why we have a school? Okay, yeah. What is actually purpose of having a school? From my point of perspective, the purpose of having school is that you should supposed to be transmit the knowledge, give the information regarding about the people and things, maths and science and things and that, expand opportunities, strengthen citizenship, build character, prepare for changing economy. Like basically is this thing na ki what is actually school for? Giving all those information, right, to kind of like create the particular person and things and that. But if all those things are actually happen at once, all those things means like that, like basically is this thing that ki transmit the knowledge, expand opportunity, strengthen citizenship, build character, prepare for changing economy and things and that. So let's just say that ki, okay, let's just understand there is a student. Okay, yeah. What kind of like a something my education will gonna provide to him to get all those five character, like all those five thing. Okay, yeah, and it does not kind of like assembly confusion and things and that. Okay, okay, so okay, let me kind of like assembly go to the susu, okay, for a while. Okay, it's a very kind of like a delicate question. I just need to understand. Let me go to susu first. Okay. Okay, sorry about the pause. Okay, all right. So let's just kind of like assembly talk about all those problems step by step. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about thing. Transmit the knowledge. Ask this question to myself that ki every student should supposed to be get the information regarding about mathematics, science, art, history, things and that. Is it essential for them? Yeah, the basic education is a very much essential. I think that na ki basic education means like that ki the person should supposed to be write, a person should supposed to be read. This is a kind of like one of the basic information that I have to be provide to the every student. Okay, yeah. Mathematics, addition, subtraction, A, B, C, D, or K, 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 G. These are kind of like some very essential thing. These are should supposed to be important. Okay, yeah. Now every subject has its own kind of like a category. Obviously, is this thing that ki I cannot kind of like a teach first year student or kind of like a first standard student about a kind of like a trigonometry. No, trigonometry chapter should supposed to be start at the kind of like a 7th standard or 8th standard or things and that. Okay, yeah. But the one thing for sure is that ki transmit the information is very much essential. Okay, expand opportunity. Okay, yeah. Now let's talk about that. Is my student should supposed to be get opportunity? Opportunity means what? Opportunity means like that whatever the education that they get, after they get that education, will they get opportunity to do a job and things and that? In this particular context, I'm not focusing on that. Why? Because I don't want that my student get opportunity about a job. What do you mean? Like basically is this thing that कि you don't want a kind of like a student should supposed to be get a job? Then what will gonna happen? What will gonna they do? That's the biggest problem. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you one thing. Opportunity means what na ki like basically I am preparing student for getting a job and things and that. But the question is why am I preparing for them? Why am I kind of like a simply is this thing that key kind of like a giving the exam or kind of like a conducting the exam and kind of like a find out the which one is kind of like a better or not and things and that. Why do I supposed to do that thing? Why do I supposed to kind of like a give opportunity to every student? Why do I supposed to do that? But dude, if you not really give the opportunity, then what will gonna they do? What will gonna they do? Like what is actually the matter for education? Like this is the one of the biggest problem, na? Like basically is this thing, like it's a kind of like a thing that na ki you are kind of like a simply focus on that ki this is my education system, this is a kind of like a student are enroll in it. Okay, yeah. Now it is my job to give them opportunity. So what is actually that you are actually giving the result? A job. Because in the end, people want money. Money came from job. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing na ki they don't really focus on learning things. They are actually focused on getting a job. And that's what the problem in Indian education system. Like every kind of like a student are wanted to get a job. They don't want to learn things. They don't want to know things. They don't want to kind of like somebody get the information and how to supposed to interact and things and that and that. Like basically is this thing now. Ask any graduate, tell me about the kind of like a Newton first law, second law, third law. Does he kind of like explain this thing? Or even if that particular person knows that ki, this is a kind of like a first law, second law, does he kind of like a understand how do we supposed to implement that thing? Like is it kind of like a simply material they just kind of like a simply just learn or just not get understand? I want my education should supposed to I want my education is a kind of like somebody that people understand, absorb, and implement, not to get opportunity to kind of like get a job and things and that. I want that I shouldn't supposed to be focused on opportunity to give them a job. Why? Because I believe in my education system that I would provide a knowledge, a kind of like a perspective, looking at the world, imagination and observation. When they see the prism, they understand that how the prism work. When they see a kind of like something the satellite is actually orbit around the planet Earth, they understand how it actually happen and things and that. Like basically is this thing na ki, like this is what I see the world. Like basically is this thing, if I turn on the fan, I understand the circuit regarding about that where it kind of like a power source actually came from, where is the resistance, this is the switch, the fan is on and things and that. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing na ki I sometimes imagine things. And this is because of the imagination, I understand things like a 4-stroke engine cycle. How is actually happened? I didn't really understand when I read the words because my understand can't really consume the information by words. When I see the animation regarding about the 4-stroke cycle engine actually happen and things and that, then I understand. I want the same thing too. That students should supposed to be imagine things. When they see the engine, they would understand, okay, what is a V8, V12, W16? What is actually those actually happen? What is actually meaning of that? What is actually piston? How the crankshaft rotated? How much RPM? How much kind of like a heat that they bear? Things and that. Okay, they just understand things. Okay, yeah. Because let's just say if I focus on giving them a proper education, if my students are kind of like somebody is this thing that imagine things very much properly regarding about every mechanism, they are already a excellent people. They are already a excellent kind of like a person who kind of like a credible to do a job. So basically, I shouldn't supposed to focus on giving the opportunity because the students are already a kind of like somebody equipped enough that they could change the world. They could change the mechanism. They could change the things and that. Okay, yeah. That's why I think that the second point, expand opportunity, I am not really focused on that. I am completely against on expand opportunity. Expand opportunity means making sure that student can get a good job to the great college and later and things and that. I don't want that. Like basically is this thing, why do I supposed to be categorize student from kind of like this is the middle school, high school, college, graduation? Why do I have to do that thing? Why? Like basically is this thing now, I am kind of like a getting the info, I'm watching any kind of like a YouTube videos regarding about World War II. Am I any kind of like a somebody like a, this video is kind of like a for such a people who are kind of like a graduate or things? No, I am excited or enthusiastic regarding about want to know about this thing. I just know, like why does kind of like some sort of information are required at some certain kind of like assembly level and things and that, and why? And also is this thing why we have this separation? There's nothing really at all. There is a one thing that I wanted to share. Exams are not good. They are literally crippled. Like basically is this thing, learning things and implement things are essential, more kind is very much essential. And people are kind of like a mostly, specifically in India, people are kind of like a mostly focused on just a numbers, just a marks. Like every school, every coaching institute are kind of like a assembly that keep flash themselves by how many students they have kind of like a marks and things like that and that. And ask me this question honestly, is this thing, the people who are kind of like really scored so much 100 out of 100, is they kind of like add something value in their society's life or something like is there kind of like a things that did, like nothing really at all na. They just kind of like a score the mark and that's it. They are not kind of like a providing that much amount of value and things and that and that. Like who are those kind of like some existing people who kind of like a change the world and they are kind of like a really excellent in school and things like that? Obviously very less amount of people who are kind of like a seen. The people who kind of like a change the world, obviously they are not the people who kind of like a score really good in the school, definitely not. So basically scoring system is not a kind of like a somebody a reliable stuff that we could find a kind of like a particular a character that could kind of like a change the world or things. It does not. Exam does not work like that. A number system does not work like that, definitely not. So basically is this thing na ki my focus on kind of like a giving the information as much as better, as much as kind of like a visualization to kind of like a get the information as they want. And I would not really focus on exam or things. I am completely against. I don't want that ki people should supposed to be have an exam. Literally not. I don't want to be kind of like as many students have a kind of like exam, and I don't want to prepare my students for job. No, I don't want it to be. Why? Because of that ki it just like that na, they will not gonna create the opportunity, because job is just kind of like a just they're gonna do a job. They will not gonna kind of like as change their world, change their society. They will not gonna do anything at all. They just kind of like do the job and they will kind of like end the life and things like that. Why? Because job is also not really good. Because what kind of like a job that you're expected, what you will gonna do? Obviously nothing really at all, just kind of like a 9 to 5 job and things, and the life is gonna end. Like basically is this thing na ki I want to be kind of like a equip my student with such a knowledge they are kind of like somebody grateful enough to change the world by themselves. Okay, literally just like it could be happen, like it does happen. Like basically this is in I could kind of like provide such a information, such a knowledge that they could kind of like somebody understand the context. Like basically it's just thing that na ki I would kind of like tell them student regarding about the how the engine cycle works and things and that. People student could imagine things and they would understand, no, this is a kind of like a flaws. If we could kind of like make a engine this way, then this would be kind of like a much more reliable for fuel economy, as well as kind of like a giving the better kind of like a somebody mileage and things and lot of stuff. Okay, yeah. So when the particular that student will gonna found, he will kind of like a create the startup, create the opportunity, kind of like a create the innovation, as well as kind of like a somebody create a rozgar for the rest of the people. Okay, that particular person will become a kind of like a simply the hero for that rest of the community, and rest of the people community will also follow that particular person. Okay, yeah. So this is what essential like basically is this thing now. I wanted to create a kind of like a star in the, I wanted to kind of like somebody make the coal as a diamond so that they would kind of like shine itself and they will gonna shine other. I don't want to be kind of like a coal, it just became coal and they just kind of like only have one purpose to kind of like burn in the furnace and things like that. I don't want that. Okay, so basically this is saying that second thing is that ki the expand opportunity I will completely against. I don't want to give any opportunity to my student, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. Third point, strengthen citizenship, teaching a student how good citizen you are as a part of India, following laws, voting, helping other neighbors. Yeah. Now strengthening citizenship. Okay, so basically this thing that ki if I kind of like establish this kind of like a something education system. Okay, yeah. So are those student are kind of like a really good citizen or not? And if I wanted to be a good citizen, then what kind of like a information that I have to be provide so that they will become a good citizen, good people, or kind of like a good things and that and that. How do I supposed to do this thing? Okay, yeah. How do I supposed to kind of like a provide them a kind of like a better person? Okay, yeah. Now let me tell you one thing. Education is a kind of like a two form of education. One form of education is a kind of like a information that considered as a knowledge. Okay, yeah. But the personal development is actually comes also from the school too. Let me tell you one thing. When I was in school, there are so many things they never really taught me. First of all, financial education completely absent. No one tell me how do I supposed to manage my financial. Nothing really at all. Okay. Another thing regarding about the relationship. How do I supposed to fall in love? Love is a very much essential part of our human body, our human things. Okay, yeah. In my education system, love, relationship, they never really taught about that. Nothing really at all. Personal development, discipline, consistency. How do I supposed to improve myself? They never really taught me anything about at all. Nothing really at all. Sex education, very much essential. Every human do a sex. They don't really teach me anything about that. Women's safety, they never really tell me anything about that thing, that ki how do you supposed to provide women's safety or kind of like assembly women healthcare or things like that. Like basically at least for the women, like basically let them understand regarding about how the periods are actually happen, what kind of like a cramps they happen, what kind of like things and that and that. When I was in kind of like a schooling, personal development is just a PT. That's it. Exercise is also really essential too. Yeah, but they don't really kind of like tell us. Sports, very essential. We have a recess, but the sport equipment is not existent. Every time we go to the kind of like a sports, we don't really have any kind of like a bat, balls, any kind of like a thing, nothing really at all. Personal development is completely non-existence when I was kind of like a schooling. Completely nothing really at all. I wanted to provide that value. I wanted to provide that everything regarding about that financial thing actually happened, how the relationship actually happened, how the kind of like somebody became consistent to be your building your habits or things and that and that. Sex education. Okay, yeah. Regarding about women's safety, women health, regarding about women periods. Okay, yeah. Obviously, is this thing that ki men are completely alien concept for them, but I wanted to understand for the male too. Because of that, ki just very much essential that ki when the women are kind of like a getting periods, how much kind of like a vulnerable she is. So basically, in that particular, as a male should supposed to be provide a kind of like a simply help for them. Okay, yeah. Obviously, I have to be provide the value for the female students too, but it is also really essential that I have to provide value to the kind of like a male. Sex education, very essential. Okay, regarding about STD, regarding about how do we supposed to do a sex. Okay, yeah. Everything, relationship kind of like a simply like a one of the biggest decision in your life is a relationship. They never really tell us about who do we supposed to marry and things and that and that. Personal development is really much essential. Okay, because when I provide that much information, we are kind of like making that student as a good person regarding about everything. Okay, yeah. And that good person is also became a good citizen of the Indian, because in the end that good person is also became a good citizen. He understand, he aware regarding about his choices and things, and he will kind of like a became a really good person as a good citizen too. Okay, yeah. So I will completely focus on this thing that key strengthen citizenship as a kind of like a strengthen the builder character, become a better person, focus on personal development. Okay, yeah. Now, build character and strengthen citizenship is kind of like a somewhat something same probably. Is this thing that key strengthen citizenship is a teaching the students how to be good part of India. following laws, voting, helping neighbors, and things and that, which is kind of like a somewhat something personal development. Yeah, like a basically build character, making a student as a good person, honest, kind, hardworking. Yeah, like this is kind of like a things. Okay, like a basically strengthen citizenship and build the character. Both are kind of like a equivalent to each other. Like basically, if I make my student as good as possible regarding about kind of like a something that key, like a teaching, sorry, regarding about the understanding the knowledge and things and that, it automatically became a kind of like a good citizen, automatically became the following laws and things and that. Okay, yeah, right. Another thing is that prepare for changing economy, like teaching a student how to be use the new technology and things and that. Obviously, this thing, if I provide this much information, I have to provide the new technology, how it kind of like simply happened. Okay, let me kind of like give you another example. Okay, I was kind of like a done, like basically I still remember maybe kind of like a somebody seventh standard, probably seventh or sixth. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, there is a kind of like a somebody kind of like a lecture about the new technology. Okay, computer. Okay, by the way, is this thing that key there is a kind of like a one computer in our kind of like assembly school. Okay, and they kind of like assembly show us this is a monitor, this is a keyboard, this is a mouse, this is a CPU, this is a kind of like assembly the things and that. Okay, also they kind of like a taught us regarding about floppy disk at that time, probably in 2007 maybe. Yeah, floppy disk. By the way, at that time floppy disk was not even kind of like some exist, but they kind of like tell us at that time DVD was exist, but they kind of like mentioned about the floppy disk too, which is kind of like some very old technology, but still they kind of like taught us and things and that, which is not really good because of that key, since the technology is kind of like simply rapidly changing and things and that, as the education system should supposed to be kind of like a changing and that. Okay, but one of the biggest problem regarding about everything is that key, how do we supposed to be change, like how do we supposed to be kind of like a change that education that much rapidly. Means example is this thing that key technology kind of like a change every single day, like every single month. Okay, we are living in the AI world where kind of like somebody that key like a every kind of like a somebody the innovation kind of like a change after a few months and things and that. So how do I supposed to be kind of like a giving the information, like basically is this thing, Indian education system is actually be more focused on kind of like a somebody textbooks and things and that. So how do I supposed to kind of like a do like a how like will I able to kind of change the syllabus every single time, like every single month, like how do I supposed to do that. Okay, so basically is this thing that ki what is actually my solution for all those things. Okay, I wanted to create a Gurukul program. Okay, now what's a Gurukul program? My education system is mainly focused on this Gurukul program. Okay, and this Gurukul program is kind of like a cover everything regarding about that building a character, giving the education, everything. Okay, let me tell you one thing how this actually happened. Okay, so in my program, it will gonna start from the fifth standard. Okay, till the fifth standard, this is a basic education will gonna provided by the teacher, like a same as kind of like all the kind of like a teacher actually provided the information. I will kind of like a provide the same regarding about the reading, writing things and that. Okay, like basically till the fifth standard. Okay, I have to be kind of like a give them a kind of like assembly enroll in Gurukul program. In the Gurukul program, okay, they have kind of like assembly tablet. Okay, now most of people kind of like a things that na ki like a almost like a 6 7 or maybe kind of like a 10-year-old kind of like a children, when they have a kind of like a tablet in their hand, then it might be kind of like a somebody lot of damage will gonna happen, because tablets is kind of like a people, the students or those kind of like a children will kind of utilize for wrong purposes, things and that. And if the kind of like a somebody Indian education system is provide the tablet, then this might be kind of like completely wrong, right? Well, yeah, you are completely right about that thing. But let me tell you one thing. Like basically is this thing, if the ink will gonna end at somewhere, would you stop writing? No, you will not gonna stop writing, right? technology is a part of our world. Accept it or deny, but it will always be there. You cannot say this thing that that student will not gonna use mobile phone, will not gonna use tablet in the rest of the lifetime. Definitely not. He will gonna use everything. Like basically, how much we are kind of like try to kind of like stay away technology from student, it will not gonna happen. Why? Because we are completely wrong regarding about that. Like basically most of the kind of like people are kind of like say this thing that ki children are kind of like a very vulnerable regarding about the technology, so you shouldn't supposed to give the mobile phone and things and that and that and that. That is true. That is true. Like that is completely true. Yeah. But it's not that ki kind of like somebody is this thing that ki we just completely like keeping away from the new technology that could kind of like add value in their life. Like basically is this thing, okay, I am completely again completely kind of like a fair that ki like if the children are kind of like utilizing the kind of like somebody the vertical videos and things and that, it might kind of like cripple the brain and things and that, right? But what if I could kind of like somebody utilize that attention to gamify so that I would kind of like educate them properly? How? By Gurukul program as a Gurukul app. Okay, yeah. So it's a kind of like a application where kind of like each student from the fifth standard, okay, yeah, they would kind of enroll them. Okay, yeah. And since they enroll them, they are kind of like simply enroll into the Indian Education System database server. Okay, yeah. Now what will gonna happen that key these kind of like simply apps design in a such a way that it kind of like a different according to the every student. Now what do you mean by that? Okay, yeah. So the question that it asks to the student, it depends on how much student is credible enough to getting the information and things like that. Example, it's a kind of like a thing that na ki in conventional system, the question is kind of like asked to the everyone and everyone kind of like a give the answer. But in this particular context, it does not really understand that which person is kind of like which student is actually good enough and which student is actually bad enough. Why? Because question is always gonna same. Okay, example is this thing, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, right? Like basically is this thing, let's just say there is a kind of like a simply 2 thing, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, I am right, you are right, everyone are right. Okay, yeah. But what if like basically is this thing, 11 divided by 77, what is the answer? Now some people kind of like give the proper answer, some people might not give the proper answer. Okay, yeah. So some people might kind of like give the proper answer, will kind of like define that okay, this particular person is actually a really good person. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing in conventional education system, like finding that particular person is a very much long lengthy process, and even after we find that particular person, we might not kind of like improve that thing. But my app will gonna understand this thing. My app, Gurukul app, will kind of like understand that every person kind of like every student has this kind of like a potential. Like what exactly my app will gonna do? My app is a kind of like an entire library of entire education system. Okay, yeah. It just kind of like a things that na they ask question, student kind of like give the answer. Regarding about the answer, my app will understand, app will kind of like a base on algorithm and thing and that it understand that ki how much student credibility and things and that. Regarding about credibility, asking such a question that kind of like a somebody like a push himself little bit kind of like a further. Okay, yeah. Like basically 3 plus 2 is equal to 5, then 5 plus 3 is equal to what? So 8. Now just say is that 11 plus 7 is equal to what? So basically is this thing na ki like a slowly increases difficulty. When it slowly increase the difficulty, student will kind of like a simply face that kind of like a problem. Now obviously some student are not good at that, some student might not really good at that and things like that and that. So system understand that this particular student is not grasping that information that much well. Some student are actually grasping so much information that much well, they are getting really high score. Some student not really grasping that much well. So basically what does actually happen? System understand that and kind of like simply give them a kind of like a simply very small or kind of like a easy question, so that he would kind of like a relevant or be kind of like a things and that. Means like that every student is a kind of like a assembly, has a kind of like assembly like a judge by the different question and things and that to understand that ki how much kind of like a student credibility and things and that. Okay, yeah, but it does not define by the credibility. Okay, like basically let's just say I am the kind of like a really good student who's kind of like giving the really good answer, even the difficult answer is actually providing really attempt really well. Okay, yeah, so that that particular person actually score really well, right? So that that particular person will kind of like get higher score. No, it does not depend on that. It depend on consistency. Okay, means like that ki if the particular student who is not really good at mathematics, but still he shows every single day, and still he shows solve the problems and things and that every single day, his score automatically increase because consistency reward. And this is what actually happened. If the student who kind of like a being consistent every single day, he's been kind of like a score. Obviously the bright student who is kind of like a consistent, they will also really higher score too. Okay, yeah. So if I do this thing, then probably I don't really required to kind of like a somebody exam and things and that. Why? Because like obviously this thing, my application is actually scoring them every single time. Like every single time student who came, student who kind of like a student spend almost like a hour in like a 1 hour or whatever the hour, kind of like a doing exercise and things and that. And because of this thing, system understand and they would kind of like a give them pointer that how much kind of like a somebody credible student are they or not. Okay, yeah. And if this actually happened, then I shouldn't supposed to be kind of like a give them exam or things and that. Okay, yeah. According to the scoreboard, we understand which student is kind of like a really good, which person, which kind of like a student is not good and things and that. Okay, another thing. Basically is this thing, the entire information that I get is actually by the self study. Okay, yeah, self study is very much essential. Because of that, ki in conventional method of study, usually self studies are not really focus on that much, but my education system provide kind of like a encourage to do self study. How? By solving the exam by themselves, sorry, solving the kind of like a problem by themselves, by things and that. Now even after they kind of like a get the problem, we have kind of like a teacher. Okay, yeah. Now most of the teacher are actually online, means in the application. Yeah, like even if they get the problem, they have kind of like a watch the video, watch the lecture and things and that, they would understand that and they would kind of like a perform better. Okay, yeah. So basically if I do this thing, then probably is this thing that na ki I shouldn't supposed to be kind of like a somebody spend that much amount of money on lectures or any kind of like a teacher. But teacher are essential. I wanted to provide the teachers too, and teachers are very much essential to kind of like a guide them regarding about everything, like every small thing that kind of like a matter to them, that ki what kind of like a some decision will gonna impact them or not, a personal development or kind of like a some connection in between student and teacher. So basically a teacher should supposed to be there. It's been almost like a 53 minute I'm kind of like a talking regarding about that and that. Okay, yeah. But I'm kind of like a sum up everything right now. Like basically is this thing, I will gonna ask almost like a hundreds of questions regarding about that. Okay, yeah. But regarding about the question, let me kind of like give the proper answer. Okay, the question is, how clearly have I defined the core purpose of Indian education system? To transmit the knowledge? Yes. Expand opportunity? No. Strengthen citizenship? Yes. Build the character? Yes. Or prepare to changing the economy or technology? Yes. And how do I kind of like a balance or aim without kind of like a creating kind of like a confusion? I am not kind of like somebody everything all at once. No. Basically it's this thing na ki these all those things are implemented throughout the technology by using Gurukul application. I am actually providing a kind of like somebody tablets for the 5th class students. So they would kind of like somebody use this tablet, use this kind of like somebody that ki solving the problems and things and that. When I kind of like do this thing, I solve everything. I will not really focus on exam. I will not really focus. Like basically, exam is not even kind of like a thing. Like exam is not existence. Nothing really at all. Just kind of like a student actually be more focused on just learning, self help, self learning, and things and that and that. Teacher are always be there, yes, but also teacher are also available in the kind of like online there too. They would kind of like help them and things and that and that. And also that score is kind of like a publicly available, means a teacher as a parents, so that everyone should supposed to see that ki, okay, this particular person is how much credible he is or not. Okay, so this is my Gurukul program. By the way, I didn't really explain that much amount of Gurukul program. I will gonna explain in the next. I will have almost like hundreds of question. Okay, right now I'm kind of like a really tired to talk right now, but it's a kind of like a some listening new beginning. I'm not really sure again. The stuff that I'm kind of like a mention are here is not exactly right, is not exactly wrong. It's just my opinion. So do not believe anything. It's just my opinion. Okay, yeah. Like this is kind of like some stuff that I imagine. It's just completely unofficial. It's just my inside my thought process. All right. So this is it. This is it. Thank you.